Hi YouTube! Welcome to Fun with Flags. Amy? Where is Amy? No, seriously, welcome to the new channel Motherboards in Time. I'm Luis of first degree of cross-platform application development, and I'm going to review in this channel some ancient motherboards. Why? Some wise mind says once time, you need to study your story in order to know how that technology is improving every year and how we can expect it developing in the next year. Today I will tell you about the motherboard born 40 years ago. Can you imagine that you have a time machine and you are back to 23? No? Yes? Well, imagine that you need to buy a new computer. What kind of motherboard can you acquire to buy it? I have a perfect candidate. The next video is going to explain you some facts about the GA-8IG1000MF motherboard, a P4 Titan series motherboard.
As you can see, this is the motherboard, a simple little one, not? Even if this micro ATX form factor and his 24.3 cm width and 24.3 cm height is not the largest standard in the market, you can fulfill all your requirements and saving space in your working space. But instead of beginning with all the capabilities and peripherals that the motherboard has integrated, let me begin with the core head of the computer, the CPU and the CPU socket. As we can see, it's not a linear socket as many modern sockets. Instead of having pins in the socket, the pins will be in the CPU that it will mount in the C socket, thanks to a lever or slider on the side, pushing all the sprung contacts apart, inserting the CPU with a little force. This type of processors with pins in this package is named Pin Grid Array, PGA. And what about the CPU? The motherboard supports Intel Pentium 4 notebook press-core processor with high-T technology and front-side bus FSB running at 800, 533 and 400 MHz. The press-core E-series with an 800 mega transaction per second front-side bus and hyper-threading support contains 125 million transistors and has a die area of 112 millimeters square, and it was clocked at 3.8 GHz. Don't it seem impressive? However, the CPU power needs to communicate with the rest of the chips of the motherboard. That's made in the architecture for the NOR bridge responsible of the faster communication and the South bridge responsible of the slower dispositives. The first jump to this communication is the Intel chipset 865G hosts IGP controller the responsibility, the NOR bridge. If we dismount that display, we can see the chip with the steps of thermal paste that its main function is to handle the communication among the CPU, the RAM and the IGP slot, as you can see in the next diagram. The slower components communicate with the CPU with the help of the South bridge Intel ICH5IO controller hub. However, let me introduce first the two things that communicate with the CPU thanks to the NOR bridge. First, I want to talk about the discolored stud. Doesn't it seem funny, orange and purple things?
Only wanna see you laughing, yeah, in the purple rain, purple rain, purple rain, purple rain, purple rain.
Leaving apart that bot joke, that's an important fact. Although you could not believe it, you could do dual channel with this motherboard and the colors indicate the different channels from the RAM communicate with the CPU via the NOR bridge. Another question is how many RAM can you put in the motherboard? The answer is easy. You have 4 slots and you can use until 1 GB of DDR400, so you can have until a total of RAM at 400 MHz. You can compare with actual values and you can see that's a big quantity of RAM for the epoch. The other thing that communicates directly with the NOR bridge is the AGP expansion slot, the green one. What is the use of the AGP slot? Do you need graphic power? Although the motherboard has its own graphic integrated chip, you will need the AGP slot in order to connect your graphic card to the motherboard. The motherboard gives you one AGP slot that supports 4X and 8X, I repeat, until 8X AGP. Some good cards of the time only need 4X AGP, so practically the motherboard support all the power graphic cards of those years. Besides the AGP slot, you can see that there are 3 slots with similar appearance. They are the 3 PCI slots with support for 33 MHz and PCI 2.3 compliant in the motherboard. Those slots can be used to connect audio, network, and other cards to the motherboard. As all devices can be connected to the PCI slot are slow, these PCI slots communicate with the south bridge instead of the north bridge. And then we talk about the south bridge. The south bridge Intel GA-8IG1000MF controller hub connect all the slower devices with the north bridge and then with the CPU. I told you before about the PCI, but also the south bridge is responsible for the connection of the ED and SATA connection, USB, keyboard, mouse, and all the integrated peripherals that the motherboard contains. The motherboard has the IDE controller that provides IDE, hard disk, and CD-ROM IDE 1 and IDE 2 with PIO, Busmaster, Ultra DMI 33, ATAS 66, and ATAS 100 operation modules. How you can connect a master and a slave? You can connect up to 4 IDE devices. Also, it has 1 floppy port that supports 2 floppy disks. Moreover to the IDE connectors, the motherboard also has those SATA 1 connectors with 150 megabytes per second speeds, so you can have hard drive SATA compliant faster than the IDE ones. Even if the motherboard has so many possibilities of expansion, it does mean that the motherboard has many integrated chips that can be enough to fulfill all our needs. For example, it has an integrated network cards built in Intel 82562EC chipset with data transfer rate 10 and 10 and 100 supported. Also, it has an onboard audio card based in Realtek ALC 655 codec graphic controller. Even if I recommend to use the AGP slot, the motherboard has an Intel 865 Spindle graphic 80 stream graphic 2 to 6.4 gigabits per second and 266 MHz of clock with direct 3D 6.0 capabilities and some 9.02. It's not the best option for the graphic, but it's okay for some tasks. So if you don't have the money to improve with a video card, you can play a little with the computer. Moreover to these integrated chips, there are many things that you can connect to the motherboard, many peripherals. For example, in the back panel, you have 2 PC2 ports for the mouse and the keyboard, 1 serial port and 1 VGA port convey on board, 1 parallel port to connect printers, and 4 USB 2.0 and or 1.1 ports, 1 infrared, 1 IADA connector for infrared, and 2 EEE 3094 ports and rear audio connectors. In the front panel, you have 4 more USB ports and 1 front audio connector. In general, if you can imagine something that you want to connect, this motherboard has the corresponding connector as you can see in the red panel. I talk about the data and physical connection between the motherboard and the rest of the dispositifs that you made the computer. But we must not forget that the motherboard has also to supply electrical power to the rest of the dispositif. Yes, we need the motherboard in order to all the components have electrical supply. For that reason, you have a 20 pins ATS power and a 4 pins ATS 12 volts CPU core to give all the electrical power needed to move the system. Moreover, you have the pins needed to a fully functional front panel with 2 series of 10 pins and less to indicate that the motherboard is connected to the power supply and also the RAM is operative. Last but not least, we need to refrigerate the motherboard. Although I saw before the heatsink of the North bridge, the motherboard has connection for one CPU fan and one system fan. Both fans have 3 pins. That gives control of the spin fan monitoring the voltage to control the temperature.
That's all, folks. I want to apologize for the technical problems. Is this my first video? Leave me a like if you appreciate the review and push the thumb down if you want to see this stupid YouTuber again. In other words, feel free to comment what do you think about the video. You can do this here in YouTube or following the other social networks as Facebook, Twitter, etc. Visit my webpage if you want to tell me what the content do you want to see in the channel, and of course share and show this video if you think that other people must watch it, or if you want to torture him. You can also embed the video or link it freely if you want on it. Thank you for your patience and hope you see you soon again. Bye bye.
Empieza. Estoy grabando.
Pues di las cosas bien, es que toma uno, no sé qué tal.
¡Toma uno!
Empieza de nuevo, ala, esa no vale. ¿Está grabando de verdad?
Ahora.
O sea, todas las que he hecho antes.
No, ahora sí.
¿A la tercera va o la cuarta?
Ahora, venga. Empieza sí.
Corta.
Aún no, que yo te digo.
Acabo en eso, de hecho. Ya pongo la imagen de las banderas.
Vale. Ahora.
¡Hi YouTube! Repitando.
¿Sacar las manos o no?
No. ¿O quieres que saque las manos haciendo el monger?
Así no se ve. Ya, ¿eh? Ya. No, luego se corta. Ya está.
No funciona.
Ya.
Platform develop application.
Well, that's all, folks. That's my line. Step aside, babe. Let a star do this. That's all! That's all, folks!
Can I go home now?